Welcome back to the channel. My name is Pascal and I'm a cinematographer based in Switzerland, and today we're discussing the all-new, or more of like a first impressions video of the all-new Canon EOS R6 Mark II. That was a mouthful. First of all, I had the opportunity to test this camera for about 2 to 3 or 4 hours. Don't know exactly how much time I got, but it was definitely short. And that's why I didn't make a full-on review for this camera. So it's only a first impression video, and yeah, let's get started. The all-new Canon EOS R6 Mark II has a 24.2 megapixel CMOS sensor, which is, in my opinion, pretty good in like low light situations. So you can boost up the ISO around to, I would say, 4000 ISO usable, but you can go even higher if you want to. But I would not recommend go over 4000 ISO because it will get a lot of grain inside the image. Additionally to the sensor, it has a new Digic X processor. Who does these names? Holy, okay, yeah. Let's keep doing names that we can pronounce and talk about it and always remember. Anyways, it has a new Digic X, I hope I say it right, processor, which means you can basically shoot more and higher frame rate photos as well as video. It processes all the imagery faster than before. That means you can shoot burst mode photos in about 40 FPS in electronic shutter and 12 burst mode in mechanical shutter, which is very impressive for a camera that costs under $3,000 US. Also, this new processor provides you with exceptional autofocus capabilities, which means you can basically shoot a human being, animals, cars, whatever you are about to shoot, and it locks on autofocus very fast and very quick and reliable. So that's a must-have for wildlife photographers or like portrait photographers, because it nails the focus always on the eye, and this is very impressive. Even if you're turning your head around, it locks the focus on your eye as soon as you get back to where it was. The autofocus system in the new R6 Mark II compared to the Mark I is, in my opinion, just a bit faster, more responsive and more reliable. It locks on autofocus even faster. The Mark I was pretty fast, to be honest, but the Mark II is even faster than that. Speaking of autofocus, we are having over 1,000, to be exact, 1,053 lock-on points, like face detection points, where the autofocus measures how it should measure the distance to the subject. That means you are basically covering the entire image frame with autofocus fields, like little boxes. It still features the dual pixel autofocus, which is world class in autofocus systems, in my opinion. Even better than the face detection in the Sony cameras, which is also very impressive, not gonna lie. But the dual pixel autofocus is, in my opinion, just a little bit superior to these Sony systems. Let's move on to the IBIS. IBIS means in-body image stabilization, which this camera has about 8 stops of it, which means it's super stable. You can enable active track in the camera, and the camera sensor will shift its position accordingly to your movement. That means you're getting stable footage, or more stable footage than without this. If you're shooting on a RED camera, you're missing out on this because we don't have any stabilized sensor. We have a fixed sensor, which means you need to have a heavier setup in order to get rid of the jittery footage you get sometimes with those lightweight setups. If you shoot on a RED camera with a super tiny and small lens like the Helios 44-2, which I talked about before in the video, you can get some pretty extreme like jitter footage, and you cannot stabilize this. Which basically means if you're having a camera that doesn't have an embodied stabilization built into the body, which is IBIS, and you're using a long lens, you will have more shaky footage than with a camera body that has IBIS built in. Now chapter 4. This chapter is quite short, to be honest, because that's the thing I could not test enough. That's the video capabilities. The video capabilities of this camera are, on paper, very impressive, and I do believe it's very impressive in practice as well. You can shoot up to 6K 60 FPS ProRes RAW in an upcoming update on the Atomos Ninja, or an external recorder in general. You can use the Shinobi and whatever else can record externally up to 6K ProRes RAW in 12-bit linear RAW, which is for a under 3K camera very, very impressive, and full frame camera, which is not a Super 35 sensor like different cameras that can shoot 6K. If you don't use an external recorder like the Atomos Ninja V or V Plus or Shinobi or whatever external recorder, you can shoot 4K 10-bit 422 internally, which is also pretty good in my opinion, and for most people out there, very much enough. You don't need 16-bit RAW like I'm shooting right now on the RED Cinema Komodo. So yeah, with that out of the gate, that I could not test the footage enough, and that's why you don't see any B-roll footage of me shooting with the camera. I will show you just some pictures. You can see the sharpness of the images, but unfortunately I have no video done with it yet. Canon Switzerland, if you're watching this, yeah, please provide me with a camera so I can take it out and see how the video capabilities of this camera are. Since I'm using a Ninja V, I could also shoot in 6K ProRes RAW if it's enabled. I would love to use this camera for a day or two, or maybe a week. Moving on to chapter 5, design and ergonomics. So I went out to the local forest with my girlfriend, her dog and her friend to shoot some portraiture and animal photography. Like I was trying to shoot her dog moving the dual pixel autofocus Mark II. I wanted to see how the autofocus and ergonomics and stuff like that work. And after those 3 to 4 hours holding the camera, because I didn't use the strap to hold it around my neck, I was holding it all the time in my hand. And all the time I was holding the camera from these 3 to 4 hours, my hand didn't got as tired as I thought it would be. Because I was using the RF 24-100 f4 lens IS USM with ultrasonic motors in it, and it's super sharp and super fast, and yeah, you can see for yourself. But the thing is, it's not a super lightweight setup, but also not a super heavy setup. So it sits kind of in between. It's not 70-200, which will get your hand pretty tired pretty fast. I could shoot for like a day with this setup and still don't be sore on my hand or something else. The build quality overall is also very solid. The camera feels like a tank compared to Sony cameras in my opinion. I was a Sony shooter for 5 years, and the build quality of Canon cameras are in my opinion a little superior to Sony's build quality, especially if you're talking about the display, which we'll talk about later in this video. The overall ergonomics are pretty nice. The body is a little bit bigger than the Sony, the grip is bigger, but you can hold it with, if you are a man and you have some bigger hands, you can hold it very good without having your pinky finger underneath the camera, which bothers me a lot when I'm using a camera for a longer period of time. That means, in my opinion, the ergonomics and design and also the dials and touchscreen and stuff like that is very good. Yeah. It's very hard to make a first impression video without sounding to be like a review. Oh yeah, I've totally forgot about the weather sealed body, and the grip feels very nice, and the touchscreen, the display, which I said I will talk about right now. The touchscreen capabilities are far superior to Sony, what I've ever seen, because the display is way better in terms of display clarity and sharpness and usability, because you can adjust settings all from the touchscreen. You can play videos back, you can swipe around like on your smartphone, and you can change settings in the menu over the touchscreen without having to use the dial all the time. Of course, using the dial is very good if you have gloves on, because touchscreen doesn't work if you don't have any touch adhesive, whatever, gloves on. But the thing is, if you're using a camera just like your phone, it's very intuitive. You can change shutter speed, you can change ISO, you can change everything from inside the touchscreen, which is new for me. I never used a camera that has this feature. Like my Sony A7 III did have a touchscreen, but you could not use the menu for it, and you cannot play back the videos from the touchscreen, but you can use it to focus, and which is very annoying in my opinion. If you put in Sony Listen, if you put in a touchscreen, make it usable, like really usable and easy to navigate. Also, the overall menu system is, in my opinion, still superior to Sony. I've recently used the Sony A7S III, and the FX3 is way better, but the A7S III is sometimes kind of, you get headaches if you're using the menu system of those cameras from Sony, and especially the older ones. The newer ones are getting a little better each iteration, but still not to this simplicity and accessibility like Canon's menu system. Chapter 6. Connectivity and accessories. So I tried to use the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth module inside the camera using the app from Canon to transfer files, which is possible, but in my opinion not as easy to use, because also the app on the App Store doesn't have a very good rating. So I think it only has like 2 to 3 stars, which is not a good indication for a good app. But anyways, I tried it out with my girlfriend's grandpa, and he wanted to get into photography. That's why he tested this camera, and I'm not being sponsored by Canon or something else. I just love using new cameras, and yeah, I'm a geek for it. So yeah, we tried it together and tried to send files from the camera directly to the phone, and then using Lightroom Mobile on the iPad and see how the raw files work and stuff like that. We could not figure out how it was the easy way how we transfer the photos from the app to the phone. Like, it worked, but it had little quirks. We eventually got sorted out. But other than that, the remote control, the USB-C ports, and all these things are very good. But one thing bothers me a whole lot, which I really like on the Sony cameras or almost any new camera, which is the HDMI out. Yeah, Canon, why do you put in micro HDMI into this new body? Really frustrated when I heard about the micro HDMI on the Canon EOS R5C, and the R6 Mark II got the same update, which I cannot believe why they did that, and I do not understand it, because full-size HDMI is far superior and far more robust than this small little micro HDMI, which can easily get ripped out of the camera and yeah, your ports are damaged. Yeah, unfortunately we do have that, and I'm not really liking that, but what else can I do? Can only suggest it to... Yeah, and then the other thing about this camera system, but that includes every other newer RF mount camera. The lens selection, in my opinion, is a bit all over the place. There are not many third-party, which means you are pretty limited to only the Canon ones, or you have to use the older Canon mount, like the EF mount versions of those lenses. They are slower than the newer lenses, like the RF ones with the ultrasonic motors. Super fast, reliable, and yeah, silent. If you're using an older lens like the EF mount lenses, they make noises, they are not as reliable. On the autofocus, they are not as accurate and fast. There are no third-party lenses that use autofocus. The only autofocus lenses that have the RF mount are from Canon. Understandable in some kind of way. They want to control how the lenses are made, and they are on par with their lenses, and they don't want to just include some third-party accessories like ones from Sigma or something, and they are not as accurate as the Canon lenses. They want to provide an experience which is more expensive but very good. So even cheaper lenses on the RF mount system are very fast and reliable. And now to the final chapter, the conclusion. Overall, I really liked this camera to use. The ergonomics are great, the autofocus is great, it's tech sharp, it's super fast, reliable, touchscreen is very good, makes fun to use the camera. But there are a few quirks, like I said before. Full-size HDMI is missing for videographers or cinematographers like me. I'm really afraid of breaking the port, the micro HDMI port. The price tag is still not cheap. It's like a middle ground camera. It's not an R5, which costs like 4 grand, but also not an R10, which is more affordable than this camera, to say the least. This camera for sure got me excited to use this outdoors with my girlfriend and her dog and her friend, and shoot some epic moody forest stuff, which yeah, felt like back in the day when I started out photography. And yeah, I love the moody forest. Like, the local forest is pretty cool. There are pretty cool findings out there. Just have to look out for it and see the composition. So that's it. Thanks for watching. Yeah, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more about camera stuff, about cinematography, about filmmaking in general, about cars maybe eventually. Not sure about that because I have a different channel which is in Swiss German about only cars and like building cars and stuff like that. But I will talk about cinematography combined with cars one day, maybe. I don't know. Yeah, that's what I love to do the most. And yeah, I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching this first impression videos of the Canon EOS R6 Mark II. Bye bye! Oh, it was a long one for a first impression video.